We got to talk a little bit about folks working remotely nowadays, and a lot of people are doing that. As I'm looking at a screen full of faces of a lot of people working remotely.
I mean, who was it that Gladys Knight sang about this? Who's Zooming who?
That's right. We're Zooming everybody here today.
I think so, yes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Well, Joel Patterson joins us. He is the head of the Vested Group. He's a workplace analyst, and talk about how people working remotely, how the lines sometimes between the office time and the personal time have become a little bit blurred. First of all, Joel, thank you so much for coming on WBAP.
Happy to be here. Good morning to you guys.
How do you keep that line a brick wall as opposed, you don't want to bring work into home and home into work. So how do you keep that line a brick wall, or can you?
Well, I think that's kind of a misnomer. I don't think you really can. One of the things that drives me crazy is the concept of work-life balance. And I know that that's a thing and is important, and everybody understands what that is. Where I struggle with it is that sometimes it seems like one is good and the other is bad. And I think that the reality is, if you recognize that you have a tough day at home, you're probably going to have a tough day at work, and vice versa. And so what some companies are doing to prevent having a tough evening at work is I shouldn't say companies, some countries are looking at actually passing right to disconnect laws. France has passed this, a couple other European countries, and really it's saying, hey, after a certain time, you are not allowed to reach out to your people because they have earned the right to disconnect. Now, the problem, as you might imagine, is how do you enforce this? What is the time that it's appropriate to disconnect? What if it's urgent? When are you allowed to actually reach out to them, and even if it's off hours? But the reality here is it's always good business to take care of your people, make sure that you have boundaries, make sure that you're treating them with respect and communicating, and I think you'll do okay. I think a right to disconnect law is going to struggle a little bit in the U.S., though.
Joel Patterson with us, a workplace analyst with the Vested Group. We're talking about working from home and trying to keep your boss out of your business once you get home. With people working from home, so many, Joel, do you imagine that this is going to be something that's going to continue into the future? And perhaps that like you said, there's just never going to be that line anymore.
Everybody, work from home has changed, right? I mean, we all know that. And so that piece has to become part of how you manage your business. But every business, every industry has got to figure out what works for them. Obviously, this is tied to what a lot of people call knowledge workers. If you drive an ambulance or you work construction, you're not going to be able to do this. But a lot of people can. And so it's really important in this day and age when the labor market is so tight, anything that you can do to improve your positioning when you're recruiting and retaining your employees, including talking about whether or not it's okay to contact you in the evening, is a good thing in today's market.
The thing about it is, if you've chosen to work at home and you still have this full-time job, if the boss calls you at home on your work hours, that seems appropriate to me. And say you can't say, don't call me between noon and 1 because I'm fixing my husband lunch or my kid's lunch. So you still have to kind of seems like you have to keep some form of work relations there available if you've decided to work at home.
Well, there's no question, and one of the benefits of working at home is that you can give your kids lunch, you can do your laundry, while you're in the middle of work. But where does that line? When do you cross that line? When is the time when you can actually give them a call at 6 p.m. And that's up to a boss and a supervisor and an organization to make sure that those people feel respected. They feel like you have invested in them and they're important to the organization. And if you're calling at all times of the night, what you're probably doing is creating additional stress for them. And if you're creating that stress, even if they don't respond to you, knowing that they have a message from somebody at work is likely going to interrupt their evening. And again, it goes back to, is that okay for you? Is it okay for them? You got to make that decision.
Joel, you mentioned that the labor market is tight. We keep hearing those stories. Hal said something earlier today, which I think is right. He said it's almost like employees now have their own union without being a member of a union. And why is the labor market so tight? Why are people just saying, you know what, I don't like work conditions. I don't like what I'm getting paid. I'm not interested in going back to work. What is causing all of this?
Well, nobody knows the real answer. I think it's a combination of all of those things. But I think the reality is a lot of people haven't come back into the market. A lot of industries are doing way better than they thought they would do going into the COVID period. And as things continue to improve, I mean, in our business, we're seeing a lot of buying signs. People are really active in the market, but there's just not enough people coming back in to our industry to be able to fill all the roles. So for us, it's about, and I think most companies, it's about, all right, where else do we look for good quality people, and how do we groom our own? It's going to take a little longer, but that's a much better long-term solution.
Yeah, well, I think November, 4.5 million people quit their jobs, and I'm trying to figure out where they are and what they're doing right now.
As soon as you figure that out, you let me know.
That's the answer we need to have.
Yeah.
Because did they just drop out and decide, you know what, I'm just going to get an unemployment check for a while and be lazy?
Or did they go to another job?
Yeah.
I quit this job, but I took another job. I've been curious about that myself.
There's definitely a lot of people that have switched careers. I mean, there is no better time to do that, because if let's just say it didn't work out, well, okay, I tried something new during COVID. Well, good for you, and now welcome back, right? So there's nothing wrong with doing that. A lot of people are jumping ship to go to other organizations in the same industry simply because they're paying more money. All these things that you can do to reduce any kind of conflict that brings them in the door and keeps them in the door is going to be good for you, especially in these days.
Well, the workplace is definitely changing, and thanks, I guess, in great part to the pandemic, but I wonder how much of this would have been inevitable anyway, that a lot of people would just demand to work from home and demand to keep the hours to what they are and saying, you're asking too much of me now in this world economy.
Well, the day of the office was supposed to end, I think, in 1985. So maybe, I think it was it Drucker, I think, that said that a long time ago.
Yes.
So maybe we finally caught up.
Yeah.
Being in broadcasting, we have an advantage because if the boss calls us between 5 and 9 every morning, we can always say, don't call us, I'm at work.
Yeah. Good thing.
That's a little too early for me.
Yeah, a little too much. This is Joel Patterson. He's a workplace analyst with a Vested Group. Joel, thank you for coming on. We do appreciate your time today.
Thank you. Y'all take care.